Hi everyone, I'm happy to be back with this new video, and in this new video I wanted to address a theme that I've had in my mind for quite some time, and I think it's so important to talk about this. And it is an aspect of the dark feminine, a shadow aspect of the feminine, a specific one that I would want to address in this video. So of course, we are entering this era where we talk about the return of the divine feminine, and with that, all the great qualities of the feminine are coming forward again, such as unconditional love, compassion, empathy, gentleness, the capacity to embrace all that is. And the divine feminine is coming forward again, not to replace the masculine that is also, has his shadow aspects for sure, but to come into balance with the masculine. And the feminine is going to help the masculine heal as well, because we all know that the masculine has this very heavy shadow aspect attached to it, which is the patriarchy basically, where there was a lot of domination, abuse, violence over the feminine specifically as well. So the feminine has really been abused for millennia, and now we are entering this period where it is changing and the feminine is coming back, is coming forward again. But in order for the feminine to come into balance again, it also needs to heal. And specifically what it needs to heal is this shadow aspect of the feminine, which is feminine rivalry. So of course, this is something that we don't talk about a lot. We know about the masculine abusing the feminine, but we never talk about the feminine abusing the feminine. The feminine trying to crush the feminine. So that's what I'm going to address in this video specifically. The feminine abusing the feminine is something very widespread, and maybe it's not present in all families, but it is very often that we see that there is this recurring theme going on. And of course, there is also the feminine abusing the masculine, but that's a different subject, and I will not be addressing that specifically in this video, although you will see there are connections. I will really be addressing the feminine abusing the feminine. So what is that? What is the feminine abusing the feminine? Well, it's female rivalry, such as competition, envy, jealousy, the betrayal of feminine values, and sometimes in more extreme examples, it can also lead to hatred, like women carrying hatred for other women. This is something that is very present in my own personal history, in my mother line, because my mother was abused by my grandmother, and my grandmother was abused by her mother, etc., etc. So of course it had a very strong impact on my mother, and one day she even told me that she didn't like women, that she actually didn't want any daughter, and like her first child was surprised. I was a little girl, so it set the scene for me in a way. And this is something that was very buried into my subconscious for quite some time, and it took time for me to realize exactly what was happening, because I could see that this recurring theme for me was that a lot of women who were close to me, that I considered friends, ended up betraying me and stabbing me in the back. And again, I didn't understand why this was happening to me until I actually started to work on myself and find out that this information was buried in my subconscious, and this is what I was vibrating as well. This is why I was attracting these women to me, and it's really just related to my family history on my mother's line. And this, I couldn't understand why these women were jealous of me sometimes, or envious of me, why they were feeling that they were in competition with me. And I actually noticed that that pattern existed between my grandmother and my mother, because my grandmother was jealous of certain aspects that my mother carried, and then my mother was also jealous of certain aspects that I carried. Although I never felt this way towards women. That's also why I never understood this in the beginning. I never felt jealousy or envy towards another woman. I never felt that I had to be in competition with another woman. Every time I met like a very charismatic, brilliant, beautiful, intelligent, successful woman, I was always, in admiration. If she had qualities that I wish I had too, well, it was very inspiring for me. So I really connected to that in that way, and not at all at a level of jealousy or envy or anything like that. So it took me some time, as you can see, to realize that that was a pattern that I was carrying, and so this is why I was attracting these kinds of situations and these kinds of women also to me. Even in school, I remember when I was a little girl, I couldn't understand why some of my girlfriends sometimes were talking badly behind my back and were kind of, being in this manipulative kind of energy. I didn't understand that. And it's only later that when I was confronted again to this kind of attitude, that I realized that these women actually, why were they acting this way towards me? Just because they lacked a lot of confidence in themselves. And this was also a reflection of my own lack of confidence that I had at the time as well, because everything is a mirror, of course. And I also, every time that they did something bad to me, or they betrayed me or rejected me, because those are the main themes that came out, it can be like betrayal, rejection. In some other cases, not me personally, but it can also be humiliation or injustice. Well, I'm not the kind of person that shuts up, I'm not the kind of person that kind of buries everything inside and doesn't react. So what I would do in those cases, I always, say to people to their face directly what I feel. And very often they were such in a state of denial that it ended up always in a big clash. And that was the end. I also realized that what they were seeking in a way is that because they couldn't find their own light and connect to their own light, they were trying to steal that light from someone else, or to steal something from that person, because very often it was stealing my creative ideas. Sometimes it was also an attempt to steal my ex-boyfriends. So there was really this idea of stealing from another person, stealing the light from someone else, because they couldn't find it within themselves. And of course, since I became public and I gained more and more visibility, well, that aspect of rivalry, feminine rivalry, was even more exacerbated, because of course this exists also in the public domain, of course. It is very present. Then I heard also other stories of women around me, telling me stories of this female rivalry, and sometimes women can be really nasty with each other, because, competition exists also within the masculine. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of competition as well, but it's more frontal, it's like more, they say things to their face and then maybe there's a punch and that's it, that's over. Women is very different. It's much more like a snake energy from behind. It's more manipulative. It's more like in the shadow. And this is also sometimes more, surprising when there is a betrayal or where we're being stabbed in the back, because we couldn't see it coming. So sometimes there were really examples, pretty extreme examples, where I heard even women who were endangered by other women, like put into situations where they were in danger, or they didn't have any help if they were in situations where they were endangered. So that's pretty extreme. And of course, we can find exactly the same rivalry, jealousy, envy, competition in the spiritual field. And of course, in the spiritual field, we're going to talk a lot about the divine feminine, the divine mother aspect, and how to reawaken that goddess within. And we are all sisters, and this, this sorority in a way. But very often, and I'm not denying that exists, it does exist, but very often there's also all this shadow aspect that is really swept under the carpet. And I've seen a lot of competition and jealousy and rivalry in this field, definitely. It's like, who's going to be, and a lot of spiritual ego, of course, who's going to be the best shaman, who's going to be the best psychic, the best channel, the best healer, or whatever. And I've seen also examples where some women who are spiritual guides, for example, they take on really masculine aspects, very yang aspects, and they become like women who are in power and who actually have power over other women. And the other women are almost like submitting to the power of that woman. And it's very similar to if it was a man, but it's a woman. And this is also, it can also be a little bit dangerous because there's a bit of a, you know, a negative guru aspect to that sometimes. So why is there this female rivalry? Well, this can be really traced back to several millennia. And we see, obviously, that since millennia, the masculine has been dominating this planet. Patriarchy has been dominating this planet, and one of the aspects that it created is that the female aspect has been completely crushed, has been forced to repress itself and to submit because the feminine has been so abused. And that means that for millennia, you know, through all the family lineages, all the generations and generations, women didn't have any social status. They didn't have any power, they were silenced, they didn't have any voice. The only status they had were as mothers or as domestic slaves. So of course, this creates a big shadow aspect within the feminine. And that shadow aspect was expressed through women who started to act, you know, behind the scenes, like in the shadows, competing with other women and trying to dominate other women in order to stand out in front of men, because that's the only way they could actually have a kind of status, in a social status, is to stand out, whether it's through their physical appearance or their qualities. And so there was this competition and rivalry among the women that was more and more present. And this also led to, you know, like the really shadow aspect of the feminine, which is manipulation and trying to gain power through manipulation. So acting behind the scenes in the shadows and trying to actually in the end also manipulate even men. So I was saying that the abuse of women on men also exists, but there was also this aspect, you know, we all know about these stories where there's always a woman in the shadows behind a powerful man, whether it's a king, an emperor, or today even presidents. And they're kind of like, you know, pulling the strings from behind, and they are the ones who are actually in power and controlling the man in a way. And of course, there is this famous mirror, mirror, who is the fairest of them all? And this connects back to fairy tales, and fairy tales are very imprinted into the collective unconscious. So we've all heard the stories of Cinderella, you know, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, the Little Mermaid, you know, the witch is trying to steal her voice. I was talking about, you know, the fact that they wanted to steal things from others earlier. And what do these evil stepmothers or witches, this, you know, dark feminine archetype have in common? Well, they're all jealous and envious of their stepdaughters, of princesses, mermaids, etc. And sometimes they even want them dead because they're so envious and jealous. And what do these princesses or mermaids or, you know, like these beautiful girls have in common? Well, they really embody this light. They embody beauty, they embody purity, they embody gentleness, kindness. And that is the aspect that the evil stepmothers and witches wish to steal from them, because they cannot find that aspect within them. And that is really so anchored in the collective unconscious. It is so anchored from childhood, because we hear about these stories as little girls, you know, like the evil stepmother and the witch. And so if I'm a really nice little girl, and if I'm kind, maybe, you know, I'll have an evil witch or an evil stepmother trying to kill me. So unconsciously, this is what is happening. So it's also important to have that in mind. So if we want to fully embrace the divine feminine within us, if we really want to, you know, step into those qualities, we really need to address this theme, and we really need to address the healing that is needed also regarding the feminine. And it's really about healing our family lineages, our mother line. And you know, it's so important right now. The last couple of years have been so important for ancestral healing as well. And that's really what we need to do. And when we do that, then we release that information that has been going on for generations and generations, and we can prepare a new energy for the generations to come. And then we can also, because when we do this work of healing, it also leads in the end to forgiveness. And that work can only be done by certain souls. Not all souls are ready to do this shadow work, because, as I've mentioned before, sometimes when the person who betrayed or who acted badly or, you know, viciously, etc., is confronted to that shadow aspect, very often there is either denial or violent reaction, or just, you know, like they escape. They don't want to, the shadow doesn't want to be confronted to the light because the shadow is afraid of the light, but it needs the light to heal. So it's only the souls that have like a higher vibration that are able to actually face this kind of shadow and to heal it, to integrate that shadow aspect. And when we do that, we also induce a healing towards the other person, even though the other person is not aware of it. So there's a kind of a balance that you know, comes out of it. And of course, once the work is done, then like magic, we do not attract these kinds of women anymore. We attract beautiful women because our vibration has changed. And so I'm very grateful, for example, since I've done the work, that now I'm also meeting more and more beautiful women who are really grounded into their feminine, because most of the time they have done the work on themselves. And, you know, whether it's in my personal life or also during retreats, I really met beautiful women, and really having this feeling that it is possible to have this sisterhood again, and to really embody fully that divine feminine together and to spread it. Because the next step is really about that. It's about embodying those feminine qualities, those divine mother qualities, and that includes also men, because men also have a feminine aspect, in order for us to, like I said in the beginning, like the feminine, the divine feminine is really balancing out that masculine energy. And when the feminine heals, then it really also embraces the shadow aspects of the masculine in order for the masculine to heal. And so we are entering this phase of really a more polarity balanced world, where these divine feminine qualities are also coming forward more and more. And we are really feeling that gradually we are stepping out of this ego consciousness, the masculine consciousness, which is really related to competition, domination, rivalry, comparison, to more and more of the heart energy, which is the heart consciousness emerging, which is even, you know, like, of course, bathed in that unconditional love, and also embodying fully that peace and that harmony that we all wish to see on this planet, and that this planet desperately needs. So I hope that this video was useful, and don't hesitate to comment if you've been through these kinds of experiences yourself. I'd be really curious to read your stories and where you're at right now. And I will see you next time in my next video. Take care. Sat Nam.